watching Left, Right and Centre. I'm Nidhi Razdan. On the show tonight, the coal scam embarrasses the UPA and the Prime Minister again. Now a former coal secretary who's been booked by the CBI says he's done no wrong, and if there's been a conspiracy, then it should include the Prime Minister as well. Doesn't the buck stop with Manmohan Singh in the coal scam, and can the PM wash his hands off the issue any longer? Also tonight, our main debate, a row over Kapil Sibal's remarks that Modi is all hype whose bubble will burst. Is the Congress in danger of underestimating Narendra Modi? But first, our top story tonight. Former Coal Secretary PC Parekh created a stir today as he lashed out at the CBI for booking him in the coal block allocation scam. Firmly maintaining he had done nothing wrong, Mr. Parekh said that if there was indeed a conspiracy, then the Prime Minister too is accountable since he signed off on the decision. Mr. Parekh has been booked for the allocation of a coal block to Kumaramanglam Birla's company Hindalco. The BJP says it's time for the Prime Minister to be investigated.
If it is a conspiracy, then there are a couple of conspirants. Mr. Birla, who made a request, he is a conspirant. I, who examined and made a recommendation, I am a conspirant. And the PM who took a decision is also a conspirant.
PC Parekh, first a whistleblower, now an accused, lashing out against the Central Bureau of Investigation, which has filed an FIR against him in the coal scam. Ironically, the former coal secretary was the first man to push for transparency by advocating the use of bids to decide coal block allocations. His letters in 2004 to the then Minister of State for Coal Dashri Narayan Rao and Cabinet Secretary B.K. Chaturvedi were completely ignored. Later, Parekh's letters were upheld by the CAG when they submitted their report on the coal scam. Now the CBI alleges Parekh favoured Kumaramanglam Birla, promoted Hindalco. They claim the former coal secretary overturned the screening committee's recommendation and gave the coal block to Hindalco, and that he met with Kumaramanglam Birla personally before the decision was taken. Parekh says he did nothing wrong.
Mr. Kumaramanglam Birla made a representation to Prime Minister that this has been an unfair decision for us because we were the first applicant, we are equally competent, and the case should be reviewed. He also met me and made a similar representation. I felt that there is some merit in his representation and matter needs to be reconsidered. So I re-examined the matter, and then I made a suggestion that apart from Navali, we can also include Hindalco in this coal block. They can make a joint venture and operate it as a joint venture company. This recommendation was approved by the Prime Minister as coal minister, and I find there is absolutely nothing wrong in it.
Parekh's words about the Prime Minister, however, music to the opposition's ears, which has renewed its demand for an investigation against Dr. Singh in the coal scam.
Time has come for Parekh to speak up. He has spoken a little. He should come out clean now, make public statements of how files were disposed of at that time, how chits were received from the Congress party headquarters in the PMO.
I don't think it is important as to what the BJP has to say, because all that they have been doing is saying for the last 10 years.
To date, the CBI has filed 14 FIRs in the coal scam. But is it just the tip of the iceberg? With Uma Sudhir in Hyderabad, Sunitra Chaudhary for NDTV.
Meanwhile, Commerce Minister Anand Sharma has spoken out against the FIR filed against industrialist Kumaramanglam Birla, saying that the country will suffer in an atmosphere of fear.
Has the decision of the CBI to book Mr. Birla and the former coal secretary taken you by shock and surprise?
Well, this is an unfortunate development because we have a system which is transparent, open, and we have due processes which are followed in decision making. Irrespective of what the specific issues are, there is no denial of the fact that the corporate leaders, including Mr. Kumaramanglam Birla, are held in very high esteem in India and abroad, and they have made their own notable contribution. So the larger question which comes up is that whether we have an environment which is conducive to decision making and also which gives confidence to the investors, to the corporate world.
And that's exactly the sentiment that all of corporate India is echoing at this point, because Mr. Kumaramanglam Birla clearly is one of the most respected leaders of corporate India. He's someone held in very high esteem, is known to actually go by the rule book.
No, I will say one thing. It has been a negative narrative, and that has gone on for too long. What is happening in India is vilification. Vilification of the entire political class of the government, vilification of the entire India Inc.
We cannot deny the fact that crony capitalism does exist in this country. Corruption remains one of the large issues.
Corruption is a bane of our country. Corruption has to be eradicated.
Right.
But that does not mean that in the name of fighting corruption, you do something which is extreme in the other direction, that nobody takes any decisions, whether a civil servant or a minister. There is no economic activity, all the investors run away. Now these are the corporate leaders, whether you talk of Ratan Tata or you talk of Mukesh Ambani or Anand Mahindra or Kumaramanglam Birla, they are globally respected, they are iconic figures.
Well, are the latest developments yet another embarrassment for the UPA and for the Prime Minister? And can the Prime Minister wash his hands off the coal scam any longer? Joining us here in the studio tonight, we have Piyush Goyal, National Treasurer of the BJP and Rajya Sabha MP. Also with us, the Congress's spokesperson and Rajya Sabha MP, Abhishek Singhvi. Mr. Singhvi, to you first. How much of an embarrassment is this? Because at the end of the day, like the coal secretary said, he says I haven't done anything wrong. But hey, if I was the one who was conspiring here, what about the Prime Minister who signed off on this decision?
Look, Nidhi, I must say that had it not been so tragic, it would be comic. It is laughable. It is most unfortunate that the CBI has done this or is doing this. First of all, Nidhi, the basis of the CBI saying this on the face of it sounds absurd. Secondly, contrary to what a lot of channels have been playing, if you hear the actual statement of Mr. Parakh, who otherwise has the reputation of being an outstanding officer, it is just the opposite of what is being ascribed to him. He has said that this and this happened. Basically what happened was simply that there was a prior application by the Birlas. The Birlas wrote officially in letters saying that they should be considered as a prior applicant. They wrote to the Prime Minister, the Coal Secretary, they met both and they put their case. And exercising executive power which vests in them, these people decided to give a joint allocation. And Mr. Parakh in today's statement said categorically there's absolutely nothing wrong. He only added that in case this kind of thing is seen as wrong, then obviously the coal minister and the coal secretary and everybody else who did something openly, officially on file is guilty. So he was not at all castigating the Prime Minister, he was saying something actually saying how silly the CBI was.
That may be true, Dr. Singhvi, but the point is the CBI has still registered the FIR. If the CBI has filed that FIR against him and Mr. Birla, then there's a third player in this, isn't there? And that is the PM.
No, 1 minute. Let me complete. You haven't heard my third point. Let's get it clear, Nidhi. We live in a rule of law. We live in a democracy which is a vibrant one. Neither CBI is God, nor CAG, nor CEC. These are all institutions which have to be accountable. We are accountable to Parliament. Some of you are accountable to the press. Others are accountable to the people. You cannot have the CBI as if it is not accountable as the last word. In the name of a court-monitored investigation, to suggest that there is no ankush, no anusashan, no review of such things, and the approach is that first you register criminal cases and then you see what's going to happen, and ultimately the court may quash. How does it matter? Let's just go and register a criminal case. I think it's absolutely ridiculous.
Okay,
it weakens the otherwise fair image of the CBI.
Congress being
They've
aggrieved
done some
by the
outstanding
CBI.
work, but this particular case.
Okay,
No,
Piyush Goyal, but let me ask Mr. Goyal on this particular point.
It sounds funny.
No, I know it does, and I'll come back to you on that, but you know what the Congress is saying,
and one last
which
thing,
is true.
Nidhi,
No,
unless you have robust governance, Nidhi,
Yeah.
if you don't have broad shoulders, if you don't have robust governance, if I can't meet a delegation of press people asking for something and take a decision on file, and by all accounts this officer is supposed to have an outstanding reputation, I think it's a very sad day for decision making.
But the point is that the investigating agency
has
filed the FIR. And the point also is, one second, Dr. Singhvi. Let's get the BJP's view in. That Mr. Parakh doesn't actually say the Prime Minister is guilty. He does maintain that nothing wrong was done. And he, as Dr. Singhvi pointed out, he hasn't implicated the Prime Minister. He said it's absurd. I haven't done anything wrong. If there's a conspiracy, it's not just me, it's the PM as well.
Well, Nidhi, very clearly what is evident from my dear friend Abhishek's comments, this government has made it its policy to shoot the messenger rather than learn from the mistakes that they have committed. They have over the last few months, probably years, derided every institution of integrity, particularly the Comptroller and Auditor General of India, who I think in a manner of speaking has brought corruption to the fore. He has flagged off an issue which concerned Indians all these years. And finally, we have a situation where India is awake to this reality. I'm glad that the CAG has done a good job. There may be some exaggeration, there may be some comments on whether the figures were right, figures were calculated rightly. But the fact is he has brought corruption, and particularly the corruption indulged in by the UPA government over both its tenures to the fore. Now, in this situation, you have ministers of this government, you have spokespersons trying to deride the CAG and not really take the message, what he says, about the irregularities in the allocation. Here, there is a particular case where I suspect rather than the irregularity, this was a case where the Congress is trying to fix the whistleblower. Mr. Parakh, in his wisdom, when he took over as coal secretary, had suggested allocation of coal blocks through the auction route. He had recognized the reality.
Ironically,
he had recognized the reality that after the 2003 Electricity Reform Act, power will become now more and more privatized. There will be demand for coal. Coal India cannot meet it. International prices started shooting up towards the middle of 2004 and went up to astronomical heights. And he raised the point that let's auction these blocks. The government now decides that rather than have Mr. Parakh on the other side and giving witness to the reality of their corruption between 2006 and 9 particularly, they decide to make him an accused in a case. And in the collateral damage, they even attack Mr. Kumar Mangalam.
So you believe they've deliberately gone after him and manipulated the CBI again?
I am convinced that this is a deliberate ploy of the Congress. They are making the whistleblower an accused, and in the process killing India incorporates faith in India. You will now find Indian businessmen have lost any hope in India. They're going to start leaving in India. Foreign investors have already left Indian shores. I suspect this one move is going to cause so much damage in the coming months that you will again see rupee falling like crazy. The economy is in absolute doldrums. It will only get worse. The Congress is responsible for this corruption.
Okay, that's a serious charge. That's a very serious charge that Piyush Goyal makes. He believes you've deliberately manipulated the CBI to go after Mr. Parakh.
At least you should not have missed the irony in this, Nidhi, even if Mr. Piyush Goyal has. My good friend Mr. Goyal has.
There are many ironies here today.
It's a funny thing. Unwittingly, Mr. Piyush Goyal has largely endorsed what I have said. You heard me just now. He is right, Mr. Goyal is absolutely right, that if you have these kind of FIRs against captains of industry, principally on the ground that the captain of industry meets the Prime Minister, who happens to be coal minister temporarily, or the coal secretary, and then files an FIR, well, yes, industry will take flight. That was the burden of my song.
I
was critical.
I agree to that extent.
CBI had not, and I think Mr. Goyal has endorsed it completely. Let me complete. That's point number one. Point number two, again a supreme irony, Mr. Goyal perhaps did not notice that. I have said that by all accounts the reputation of this officer is of an outstanding nature, and that's another reason why the CBI should have said that, look, on the file he wrote, the Prime Minister was brought to the attention, the man met them both and said, look, we are a prior applicant, do something, and they simply joined Naval Lignite and them together. So on the contrary, I am pointing out the CBI's error. Where's the question of victimizing the officer? So both these ironies are lost. Thirdly, what is also lost, the supreme irony, that Mr. Parakh has been the basis of trying to change into a new policy. The policy which the government of India stood by. And the CAG in fact praised him in the report, as you know, Nidhi. And of course, the CAG went overboard at one point that while relying on the new initiatives by Mr. Parakh, it said that till such time as those new initiatives Mr. Parakh got were translated into an act of parliament, which they had not.